Thank you for everyone for coming to attend my session called Harnessing the Digital Dragon. I guess this doesn't work. My name is Nika Hector. I am Director of Web Development for a government consulting firm called DS Federal. In 2024, I also started my own web development consulting firm called Open Pixel. I am a co-organizer for a conference called Drupal GovCon. Has anybody ever attended or heard of Drupal GovCon? Okay. Well, it happens in Maryland in August, and so it's a wonderful conference, 3 days. We also do webinars that I moderate every third Thursday. And I am a board member. And last but definitely not least, I am a mom and a wife. A mom of 2 and a wife. As you can see, this isn't your cuddly little storybook dragon. This is a digital beast, and it represents what I deal with on a daily basis as a director of web development. Oftentimes I receive content requests, many, 30 to 40 a day, and managing that along with teams can often be difficult. Over the past 10 years and probably half of my career, I've managed nonprofit websites, private industry, and primarily government right now. But what I find across all of those industries are that the problems are mostly the same, and that if you don't have a good web presence, it will make the job of managing content and even the daily tasks of managing it difficult. So there are 3 main challenges that I always have to deal with. One, especially when you're dealing with enterprise level content management systems, just the daily requests. Maybe you get 20 to 30 content updates. Having to manage those can be difficult. Also providing consistency with regard to accessibility, consistency with a voice. Having the necessary processes and tools put in place can make that a lot easier. And then lastly, planning. I feel like that's the last thing we often think about when it comes to web governance and content management. And so us as developers and even especially content managers, we need to ensure we have proper planning in place. I'm gonna take a sip because my mouth is dry. So how do we go about making our foundation strong? What I'm first going to talk about is content strategy, and then having a good content governance. And your content governance really is a part of your content strategy. And then you should have a good web content management process, right? Setting in place the different workflows and standards that you need so that your web content processes are easy. And they follow a logical flow. And then once you have that, you do your content audits, which allows you to improve upon your content and your digital presence. And then I'll share with you some of the digital tools that I use throughout a lot of the projects that I manage today. So, your content strategy, it answers the who, the what, the how, and when. I do believe that your content strategy should be a document. It is ongoing and it should be evaluated periodically throughout the year because as time goes along, your website changes. So your content strategy should be adjusted. Also, it is important to remember that each business, their content strategy should be different because your business goals are different. So they should align to your content strategy, should align to your business goals, and you shouldn't compare one content strategy that you see another organization, even if it's similar to yours, you should make it align it to your business goals. One of the most important things, and I think when you have a web presence, some people tend to forget, are the personas. As web editors, as well as web content managers, and I even feel like even web developers, you need to shift your focus from what we want to say to what the audience wants to hear. Knowing who your personas are, you can kind of control your tone of voice and make it consistent across your web presence. And it also allows you to identify the different content distributions that you could take advantage of. Like where are your users going to on social media to find the information that they're looking for related to your web presence? Is it Instagram? Is it TikTok? Knowing that information can help you. I also even think, personas are normally built when you first do a web development project, right? When you're first building a website, people develop the personas. But what they often do is they sit them to the side and continue on with the additional operations and maintenance and the web content management, but they don't think about the personas. So I think you should actually print out the personas and have them on your wall as a constant reminder of who you are writing your content for and building your website presence for. Once you have your personas, it's important to have goals and objectives. We all have goals and objectives for our lives. You should have the same thing for your website. Goals are long-term and they're aimed to define what you want to achieve from a long-term perspective. Objectives are more measurable, and they come from goals and they are drilled down. So for example, I love to use mind maps. The example you see is increasing, my main goal is to increase brand awareness. And from there, I created mini goals, such as improving SEO. And then even I drill down further to get to my other objectives, such as conduct keyword research and optimize website content. You should also at times attach metrics to that information. So once you have your goals and your objectives, then you can develop your key performance indicators. Because basically what gets measured gets done. So these are measurable goals that allow your team to determine the success of a particular initiative or digital operation. Each piece of content should be associated to a key performance, because that way you are allowed to easily identify the goal that it came from, right? And then measuring it over time, you can see how well that goal is doing. Whether it is 5% increase in unique visits, how many visitors are coming to a particular page. If you measure that information from month to month, it can tell you a lot. And also your KPIs should be time bound. Now it's time to put things in action, right? Now that you know your goals and your objectives, you have your persona set, now you can work and focus in on the processes. the workflows and the frameworks for the organization to manage and guide the content. Part of your governance is knowing who is doing the work, right? You have content owners, you have your web content managers. Knowing this information provides clarity and accountability for your team, and it improves efficiency. It actually avoids confusion. This is particularly important when you're dealing with small teams, small to medium, where you potentially have one person sharing the same, doing two roles. Even when they're doing two roles, having them define allows them to know the boundaries that they're working within so that they're clear and can move forward and be more efficient in doing so. Another thing that is often created at the beginning of a web redesign are style guides. And just like personas, they're put away and you revisit it, but style guides provide the look and feel for your website. And web content managers also revisit and go back to these pages to guide them in building the pages. So it should be a living guide, and periodically after 3 to 4 months, your web content managers should work closely with the developers to improve it and add additional icons that you may be using to your website. Are there additional web components that aren't included? You need to make sure you keep your style guide up to date. I believe that accessibility is really a social responsibility. I work for the government and I build a lot of government-related websites, and it is a legal and compliance requirement. It also improves SEO and usability for the website. So you should definitely use semantic tags, HTML, and alt tags that will correctly position your headers, and it just helps. You should document your accessibility, and it is important. So once you have your personas and your style guide, there are two main types of workflows. The first one are editorial workflows. So editorial workflows help teams build on more efficient processes so they can focus on building and writing good content. So you should have an editorial workflow that helps you work out content creation. You should even have one for social media engagement. And I really encourage using editorial calendars. At the end, you'll notice I have one for brainstorming. And I think that is so important for web content writers, because in order to, you need ideas to be able to, write good content. And so even having a workflow to brainstorm is so important. This second workflow I actually took from one of the projects that I manage, and I made it, I simplified this, right? But it gives you a good example of what a workflow should entail. You have a start, you have decision points, and they all are represented in yellow, and it reduces the confusion for teams, right? They don't have to sit and wonder how to make the decisions on content and how they deal with content, right? So critical updates, do they message in Slack? They message in Slack. If it's not critical, then they refer to a checklist where they run down, and this checklist is provided to the content owners so that they are aware of the process. And having content workflows that give this type of information step by step is so helpful to your web content team, and providing visibility to your content owners gives them clarity on how your team works and performs and gets the job done.
This is cool. Neck and head if you're
I appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Another important aspect are content request forms. I have managed teams that manage their content requests through emails, and I feel like that is not one of the good ways to do it. You need a way to document your content requests. You should use an online tool, whether it is Asana, Jira, but you document the requests that are coming in. Having that repository full of information, you can pull back from it later when you have questions or people are wondering why a particular content update was made. You also can pull wonderful metrics. I love metrics. You can pull wonderful metrics from these content requests that come in. And it standardizes it for the team so they don't have to question. And even people who are using these content requests, they know the information that they should be providing. So I mentioned metrics because metrics rule. They provide decision-making information. So these metrics, I am embarrassed a little and appreciative.
I'm rooting for you.
So these are the web analytics they look like the ones that you see in Google Analytics, but they allow you to identify your strengths and weaknesses. I use web metrics that come from analytic tools to help me make decisions on the pages that I'm going to improve upon. You really want to take a look at like top visited pages, top downloaded pages. Knowing that information is important, like from a content audit perspective as well. So the earlier slide kind of talked about the metrics that you get from your web analytics tool. But these other metrics are important too, like how your team is performing and how many content requests that your team actually gets, right? Keeping that information. So I manage one team that on average we receive 380 content requests on a monthly basis. Knowing how many content requests we receive, how much time on average per day it takes for us to complete one, how many tickets are opened at the end of the day, knowing the tickets that you completed. And so in the middle you'll see I have tickets completed, and I'm keeping track, here we're keeping track like of each individual person and the type of ticket. I don't necessarily share this information because it's really not a competition, but it allows me to know like the efficiencies. And then also average days to complete is really helpful, especially when it comes to like important content updates like rollouts and media blasts. So details matter too. I know you can't really see a lot of the detailed information, but this shows like how many tickets that our team received for a day. It also shows the type of tickets, and it shows the current work in progress. This spreadsheet is actually used on a daily basis and during our stand-up calls, so that we can identify any tickets that we need to address immediately, address any high priority tickets that have been sitting open for a long period of time. So details matter, but again, as I mentioned earlier, some organizations may not need this level of detail. You need to hone in on the details that matter to you. Content audits are all about continuous improvement. You inventory, and when I inventory, my first place to go to inventory is Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics. I want to look at my top visited, top downloads, and then you evaluate. So once you have all of your data, then you evaluate that data, and then you recommend, and then you repeat. Content audits, the important thing, content audits can be tricky. You must get buy-in. If you attempt to do content audits without leadership buy-in or without your content owners being aware or interested, I find that you really don't make a good progress. You have to have buy-in from your content owners, or it makes the work of doing a content audit really difficult. So I think it's important that you find a way to communicate, whether that is through like Drupal town halls or monthly communication meetings. Communicating the importance of content audits helps to your teams to make progress. Another important thing is continuous improvement. I mentioned through the content audits, but one way that we implemented continuous improvement is that we went through the process of the Kaizen. Have many people heard of the Kaizen method? It was born in Japan, and they used it for Toyota used it to automate their building of cars. And so they looked at their processes and incrementally improved. And so you can do the same with your content audit. Take a look at your processes periodically and see if there are places that you can improve upon. It's all about continuous learning and reducing the time that it takes to complete tasks. So I mentioned there are a lot of digital tools that I use to do the work of analyzing content. Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, Crazy Egg. Crazy Egg allows you to provides heat maps to your website so you can see where people are interacting. I think Hotjar does the same thing. SortSite is for 508 compliance, and it's particularly used if you have internal websites that you can't gain, like other users can't gain access, but you want to run reports from a 508 perspective. Sort is good. Hemingway Editor allows you to write plain language. It's an AI tool that you use for plain language. 4C is a digital tool that allows the surveys that pop up on your website. That information you can use and feed into your content audits to improve that. Adobe Acrobat, I have that here because that is what is used for 508 compliance with documents. PDFs, it does a wonderful job of doing the 508 check. And then Screaming Frog, we use anytime a big change happens on the website, links change, and you want to run a quick scan of the website to see any SEO issues or broken links. Screaming Frog is a tool to use. And also SiteImprove is another tool that we use to do automated scans on a weekly to a monthly basis to evaluate SEO, and accessibility. So a lot of these tools are helpful in generating good data that you can use, as well as better understanding your user needs. So I say, you've got this. Great content isn't an accident. It is planned, maintained, and governed. And with proper planning and care, you can tame the digital dragon. Thank you. Are there any questions?
I have a question. Thank you. It's very helpful. The Google Analytics, do you take training in that? And if you do, where do you get the training? Or do you rely on online forums?
I haven't taken any training. I rely on the online forums. And I figure I've always learned like through hands-on and digging in there.
Yeah, just digging around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it to be really difficult to work with online forums when I'm under the gun and trying to get a question, but yeah, and Google keeps changing all the time as well, so, yeah.
Mhm. Hi.
Hi. So sometimes we deal with a lot of feature requests, and the management problem we run into is when to say yes or no to a request. Can you go through like what questions you tend to either ask yourself or your team, maybe what metrics you keep in mind when determining to say yes or no? Because right now we fall into saying yes to everything, which ends up, sorry, it's also moving team, ends up being a problem down the line. You have to have some boundaries.
Yeah, so I think it depends on the impact that change is going to have, right? Is it going to develop, is it going to impact the development? So is your team small? Like, do you have a set of web content managers and a set of developers? How?
We have a small team of developers and then disparate site managers that are handling individual sites, and then a few developers that oversee multiple sites. So, yeah.
I believe that, so the development team has their set of priorities that they're working on, right? But the web content team also has their set of priorities. I think it depends on the impact that change will have and how if it impacts the development team, how they're going to put it into play. And that is one of my, as a consultant, we tend not to say no.
We tend to price them up.
Because we're working for the client. But my pushbacks normally happen when they are large, don't fit the normal structure of what the website can do currently. Like if you can't build it with the components and the web forms that you have, then maybe it's time to kind of like push back to those web content owners and provide them with the necessary information and also provide them with the analytics, right? Are those pages being visited a lot? Like use those metrics because people like to have metrics. So use those metrics to provide that level of information.
I have a follow-up. What are some things easily achievable, but it's something that you think is a really bad idea? What's your process for negotiating those requests?
We're internal, so we can't charge by the hour.
Say that again.
What
What is something-
if you get to implement either content or some other feature that's easily achievable, but you just think it's a bad idea?
How do you defend that it's a bad idea? Google Analytics is a really, we haven't been using it, so it's a really good approach to see if people visit the page at all.
If they come to me with something that is complicated to show from a web perspective or should be visual instead of like words, or they don't really understand what they really want, then yeah, that's when
Can I try? I have actually an example of this from last year on a project super easy thing to do. Sure, we can swap them out. They wanted to add an image onto each of the icons with a number. So it's a comply chain. They wanted to show people where each of the icons were within the comply chain. Except doing that made it look like when you have an email and the user accessibility person, our UX person said, you can't do this because those little dots will make everyone think they got a message. And then we all went, oh my God, that's right. And they no longer wanted to do this. So for us, having a usability expert who could take these great ideas and drill them down into, yeah, don't do that, was really helpful.
And then also if it falls outside of your style guide, like it doesn't fit in what you currently think the website should have, then that is an easy reason. Like your style guide is your Bible of what to do and what not to do. That's why I say it's a living document that should be constantly updated.
So I have something to add to kind of piggyback on what you were saying. 2 additional tools that we use for the pushback, similar to your user experience, we use accessibility.
Yeah.
So we're very heavily focused on accessibility here. And so we use that heavily to push back on those simple ideas that are just not smart.
Yeah.
We also use the budget, right? We use budget and we use the schedule to push back, right? Like your idea is simple, but if we spend time doing this, that's going to impact your schedule or your budget in this way. And so those are kind of some of the things to consider. That's just,
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of smart people here at Princeton, if you can imagine. So a lot of times we're getting a lot of pushback from a lot of smart people, but they don't understand web development. But so if who you're reporting to, and you can get a rapport with them, and you can explain the situation and build trust between them, then that would help you with your pushback. But you gotta find out who that person is. Sometimes it's not the top person, you know, it's somebody that's aligned with that person. And I've experienced here, I have a relationship with the associate chair because he understands communications much more than the chair, who understands lasers and drones and all kinds of crazy stuff, really smart stuff. But so he has a rapport with both me and them, and he can explain it. But he is my liaison, and I can explain it to him. He'll understand. He'll go to it, and then I get it done. So a lot of pushback. That makes sense.
Just one more quick thing that has worked on occasion. Sometimes people will have an idea and I'll say, that's so interesting. You know, people come to a website with a mental model of how a website works. That's how they already know what to look for on your webpage. So if you can show me another website that works the way you want this one to, we can take a look at that and see if it's feasible. But sometimes it's something that no one's ever used because it's such a dumb idea. And then they can't, then they're like, oh, all right, we'll look around, and you never hear from them again.
Okay.
I had a question around content request forms, because I agree that it's important, but my experience has been that usually people try to circumvent it. They'll like try to have a 15-minute meeting or send an email in order to avoid filling out that form.
Yeah.
So what can be done to ensure that people actually follow that process?
Don't have the conversation until they fill out the form. Because
Right. Yeah. And what kind of form is that you use?
so we've taken the form and put it online. So
No, I was asking you if you use Google.
Metaphorical form, we use Jira or Asana, but they're online, Trello,
Or front?
yeah, any type of ticketing system where you can add additional fields, you should use it to track your content updates.
So you can use Jira for forms as a form collection?
Yes, but we use the Jira ticketing system,
Yeah.
so to do the tickets. Right, so every content request that we receive, it comes in as a Jira ticket. Well, it actually comes in as a form is built for usability purposes, but the details are generates a JIRA ticket. But I've used it in Asana, I've used it in Trello. So any tool that allows you, that has fields, use that to track the information that you're trying to do from a content update perspective. Any other questions? Thank you for hanging in. I don't know what that was.
And one last, if you want the, basically it's EMI credit, or if you have a SAFE certification and you need your continuing ed credit, just hop over, give me your name and email, and we will send you a certification.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.